Good morning and welcome to Pathways to Parenting podcast with Julie Johnson. We're again going to be tackling the delicate subject of dealing with serious illness or death in the family. So before we do so, let's just stop for a moment to gather ourselves, dropping your focus into your feet if you're standing or into your bottom if you're sitting, breathing deeply, allowing yourself to become aware of the feelings arising in your body right now. What messages might they be telling you about what you need for today? Pausing, dropping, taking a few moments out to contemplate your own well-being and taking care of yourself. Moving forward now, yesterday we looked at how important it is to talk to children when someone they know is seriously ill, dying or has died. There are conversations we may instinctively seek to avoid, but that for health and well-being of our whole family we cannot do so. The basic principles of how we approach these conversations are the same for whether they are dealing with illness or death. Although the first holds the hope of recovery, the fear and possibility of death is still present. Children and teens need us to give them factual information adapted to their age, maturity and emotional development. Those of us who have more than one child will be all too aware of how different they may be. For example, some younger children can be more emotionally mature or sensitive than older siblings. You are the parents of your children, so you know them better than anyone. Take this advice and tailor it to your needs and those of your children, while sticking to the basic principles of being open and honest, not shielding them from the truth. Now, here's a crucial word of warning. Remember how we discussed earlier this week how children are outstanding observers and absorbers of our own behaviour. They will apply these skills to other areas beside observing us, their parents. So even though they may appear to be playing, reading, keeping themselves occupied, while we just decide to pop the news on for a quick COVID-19 catch-up, they may still overhear TV and radio, online videos and all the rest of it. Remember that in the 21st century, where there are thousands of ways to consume the media, all these channels are fighting for their share of the same audience, which means that programmes are much, much more dramatic and more sensationalised than in previous decades. So basically, we need to be careful and thoughtful, monitoring anything we watch or listen to, especially when our children are around, or we think they are not around even. With older children, I recommend you can discuss the dangers of news overload, respect their interests and their desire to keep up to date, but also talk about how too much news can be overwhelming, affecting mood. This is especially true for teens and children who do not actually have the experience or emotional maturity to be able to distance themselves from news stories in a way that most adults can. Keeping news updates to once or twice a day can go a long way to protect our own sanity and to avoid overload. And this is the adults I'm now talking to. By now, most children will have some knowledge and awareness of COVID-19. Nurseries and schools have been teaching children about hand hygiene, sending out information to parents, as well as classroom discussions with their teachers. Your children may have had school assemblies and conversations with friends, or perhaps they've even done their own online research. And this would have particularly happened just before the school closure took place. So you can now use this knowledge as a springboard to check in with what they know and understand about the virus, reminding them perhaps of what they were told when their school closed. Once you've established their level of understanding, you can then build on this by explaining that grandma, grandpa, a friend or someone they know has become ill with the virus. If they are ill at home, then explain that hopefully the symptoms are not serious and the majority of people do get better from COVID-19. If the person is well enough, you might choose a video call that the children can actually see them, and actually there is reality, it is a mild illness. Before they do so, it would be helpful to explain any visible symptoms such as shortness of breath. If the person with COVID-19 is not well enough, then just explain that grandma finds talking difficult at the moment, she's tired, etc. Talk about who's looking after them, carers, nurses, volunteers, and use this as an opportunity to talk about all the people who are coming together in our communities to look after our loved ones. Your child might want to draw a thank you picture or put it in your window or on social media. Bringing out a sense of gratitude can help to balance out the feelings of worry and sadness. Well, these are all examples of a mild illness, but what to do if your loved one has been admitted to hospital? Start by simply giving the facts. Grandpa, grandma is very unwell. They've had to go into hospital where they can be looked after better. then let your child take the lead. They may or may not ask questions, but if they ask questions about the possibility of death, it will do them more harm than good to shield them from this fact. For one thing, even if the person eventually does recover, if your child has already heard that elderly people or those with underlying conditions are more vulnerable, then they will need you to answer their questions about death honestly. But we can reassure them that doctors and nurses are doing their best to care for their relative and that lots of people have been ill and got better. So what if the worst comes to worst and the person that you and your children love does not recover and they eventually die? Frequently our instinct is to protect children. Combined with a bit of British reserve, both kicking together, we tend to use euphemisms, saying things like we've lost the person or they've passed away or gone to sleep. Children find it difficult to understand this kind of metaphorical language. It can be confusing or misleading. What they need from us is concrete information that they can grasp immediately. Otherwise, a young child may think their grandma will wake up one day or even become anxious about a parent or themselves going to sleep. Give time and space to comfort your child, perhaps with a reassuring touch, and let them ask any questions that they have on their mind. You should also be ready for some children to be quite matter-of-fact, which can be difficult for adults when they themselves are grieving too. This may be just your child's way of viewing the world. Keep your answers short, but be honest, clear and appropriate for their age and understanding. It's okay to say you don't know the answer to a question, saying you'll come back when you find the answer. Very young children often come back more than once, asking the same question again and again. It's also okay to show your emotions and to explain that you are sad too because the person has died. Telling them that it's okay to be both sad and happy sometimes when someone dies. Sad that they are no longer with us, but happy for the life that they did have, or laughing and experiencing a sense of joy when recalling a funny memory of the loved one. Explain what will happen next, as with COVID-19 funerals have certain protocols that are followed. Only key relatives, including children and grandchildren, are allowed to attend. This is difficult and sensitive subject to talk about at the best of times, and COVID-19 brings many more challenges with it. The possibility of not being with a loved one when they die. Maybe anger or a sense of powerlessness. The sadness that they died before their time, or that funeral was not how they or we had planned it. They are real and understandable thoughts and feelings, so you should acknowledge them and work with them, remembering the basic human needs we discussed in our very first episode. How can you take back a sense of control? For example, where possible, perhaps you could plan a memorial when all this is over. Celebrate the life of the loved one, sharing how we felt about them. Perhaps you could use a video calling platform where the family can gather together to remember your loved one, and perhaps the children might like to contribute to the memorial. More support can be found on an excellent website such as Child Bereavement UK. Tomorrow we'll have a guest speaker who will be giving sound advice on listening and connecting with individual children. The topic of the last couple of days has not been an easy one. So as we finish, let us pause for a moment and check in with ourselves. Stop, breathe, drop. How am I doing? What do I read right now to feel safe and in control? Stay well and see you tomorrow.